Before the stars were mapped and before time ticked in measured beats, there was only motion, silent, celestial, eternal. Among the dust of ancient places before the alphabet had yet been born, before mankind etched memory into stone, something remarkable began to stir, a whisper of turning, of circular rhythm, of wheels within wheels. It was not born in thunder or fire, but in the quiet need to move the world more gently. Imagine now a world of clay and wind, where early hands shaped not only vessels but ideas. Long before machines, there was the potter's wheel, perhaps the first echo of rotational elegance. A disk of hardened clay spinning smooth beneath the palms, coaxing symmetry from the chaos of earth. Here, the first secret was discovered that to spin is to tame time, to fold labor into a spiral of motion. And somewhere along the banks of slow rivers in Mesopotamia, in the breath of Sumerian mornings, the principle of turning was born not just into utility, but into design. The earliest gears did not yet resemble the interlocking teeth we know today. They were wooden cylinders, wheels with pegs turned by water, by hand, or by the push of a treadle. Yet even then, they held within them the seeds of an idea too vast to be recognized all at once. That movement could be transferred, amplified, directed, one turn leading to another, one rhythm begetting many. In the distant land of ancient Egypt, time was measured by the flooding of the Nile and the rising of stars. And yet, within those stone chambers of the early engineers, there were water clocks with gears made of bronze and dreams made of sand. They did not call it a mechanism, for they had no need for such a word. They called it function, and watched as water lifted weights, spun wheels, and measured the minutes between prayers and sunrise. Then, quietly and far to the east, in the heart of ancient China, there arose a fascination with celestial order. Observing the heavens led scholars and artisans to mimic the movement of stars and planets with intricate devices. Armillary spheres rotating heavens in miniature made with bronze rings and clever gearing. Zhang Heng, a name mostly forgotten now, outside circles of the curious, built a seismoscope in the 2nd century. With hidden rods and suspended balls, he caught the trembling of the earth, translating unseen motion into deliberate mechanical speech. As the centuries turned like a wheel, another echo stirred from the rocky hills of Greece. There, in the town of Antikythera, a ship sank beneath the waves, unknowingly preserving a secret that would not re-emerge for 2,000 years. In that quiet tomb of salt and coral, the Antikythera mechanism slept. A device of uncanny precision, crafted around 100 BCE, filled with bronze gears so fine and so complex that modern eyes would mistake them for the product of industrial age hands. It was a calendar, an orrery, a mechanical oracle of the stars. And when it was rediscovered at the turn of the 20th century, it whispered a truth long forgotten, that ancient minds had not only dreamed of rotating worlds, they had built them. Gears, you see, are not mere instruments. They are metaphors. Each tooth interlocking with the next, each rotation a dialogue between the past and the present. The early gear makers did not draw lines between art and science. They sculpted both into one. In the glint of bronze and the hum of moving parts, they heard the music of continuity. Thus, the dawn of gears came not in haste but in hush, not with declarations, but with small, precise turns on riverbanks, in observatories, in temples and workshops. Motion began to be captured, redirected and harnessed not as brute force, but as grace made mechanical. And so the story begins, gentle traveler, with soft clinks of bronze and whispers of sand. As night deepens and stars spin above, let us drift forward to where these quiet mechanisms gained purpose, complexity, and the power to move not only objects, but the very fabric of civilization itself. The stars continued their stately waltz overhead, and mankind, captivated by their rhythm, sought ever subtler ways to reflect that celestial choreography upon the earth. As centuries unfurled like silk across the loom of time, the turning of gears passed from silent experimentation into the beating heart of innovation. In ancient Alexandria, in the cradle of Hellenistic learning, gears began to take on new forms, teeth shaped with intent ratios calculated to perfection, and rotations rendered into knowledge itself. In the cool stone chambers of the Museum of Alexandria, minds like Hero the engineer pondered the future through the lens of mechanics. Hero, with his playful wisdom, did not only envision gears as tools, but as performers. His automated theaters, powered by hidden weights and rotating drums, brought stories to life, using gears to mimic life and motion. He gave the world the Aeolipile, a steam-powered spinning sphere, delicate and strange, breathing hot air like a whisper from a time yet to come. Though it would take nearly 2,000 years before steam would truly power a revolution, Hero's creation was a dream, a glimpse of what rotation might someday mean. As empires shifted and the Roman world expanded, its shadow gears traveled too. They appeared in mills and in mining equipment, in the endless tasks of empire, turning grain into bread, lifting water from wells, easing the burden of labor with mechanical grace. The Romans, ever practical, harnessed the rotary wheel to transform landscape and economy. In the south of France, the great Barbegal mill stood as a monument to engineering ambition, a massive complex where water and gear worked together to grind grain at a scale once unthinkable. 12 water wheels, linked in cascading order, turned in concert like a giant breathing organism. It was no mere tool. It was a rhythm of stone and wood, a song of turning carved into the hillside. But time, like a great gear, moves forward, even when the teeth slip. As Rome declined and Europe entered the quiet fog of the early medieval period, some of the ancient mechanical knowledge dimmed. Yet the gears did not stop turning. They merely moved into different hands. In the east, where the sun rises with patient splendor, knowledge was preserved and refined. In the heart of the Islamic Golden Age, engineers and polymaths such as Al-Jazari and the Banu Musa brothers wove wonder into the mechanical. Al-Jazari's book of knowledge of ingenious mechanical devices, written in the gentle hush of the 13th century, was a masterpiece not only of invention but of imagination. Within its pages lived automata clocks and water-raising machines, all powered by elaborate gear trains, camshafts, and rotating mechanisms that seemed almost to breathe. His elephant clock, not merely a timepiece, but a cultural bridge, incorporated elements from Indian, Greek, Egyptian, and Chinese traditions, all orchestrated through gears, hidden beneath the ornate skin of art. It was as if time itself had become a storyteller, its tale turning quietly inside the body of a decorated beast. And even farther to the east, in the courts of Song and Ming dynasties, the dream of movement found yet more delicate form. Susong's astronomical clock tower, built in the 11th century, was not just a marvel of engineering. It was a cosmos rendered in wood and bronze. Water flowed into scoops, gears rotated armillary spheres, time was rung out in bells and drums. Each gear carefully cut, each rotation a measured beat in the music of the stars. Through these long and dreaming centuries, the story of gears became ever more entwined with the rhythm of life. Timekeeping, irrigation ritual, and poetry, all sharing the pulse of rotating wheels. Gears became bridges between cultures, between science and art, between utility and beauty. And so, as the world slowly awakened from the deep slumber of forgotten knowledge, a quiet anticipation began to build. For on the horizon of history, the light of the Renaissance was beginning to stir, and with it would come a new chapter in the tale of turning, a rebirth of curiosity, and a bold reimagining of what rotation could truly achieve. The sun crested once more upon the edge of history, and with it came a golden dawn, the Renaissance, where light fell upon parchment and metal alike, and minds long shadowed by silence stirred to awaken. In this age of rediscovery, when paintings captured the breath of gods and cathedrals scraped the heavens, gears, too, found their rebirth not in hidden corners or secret scrolls, but proudly at the heart of invention of clocks of visions. Imagine, if you will, a quiet workshop in Milan. The scent of ink and oil, wood, and copper. A man bends over, sketches, his eyes alive with questions that leap across centuries. Leonardo da Vinci. that soft-eyed dreamer of the future, fills page after page with gears and cogs, escapements and helicals, machines, a flight of war, of motion eternal. Though many of his mechanisms would never be built in his lifetime, his drawings spun a web between the divine and the mechanical. His gears were not merely devices, they were art, each tooth and spindle, an expression of his boundless mind. Elsewhere, in the cool stone towns of Germany and the Netherlands, craftsmen were carving time itself into metal. Mechanical clocks, once rare and mysterious, began to appear in churches' towers and halls. These clocks were not just instruments, they were symbols of order in a chaotic world, ticking temples to human ingenuity. Their gears turned hour into minute, minute into second, each rotation a metronome guiding prayer, commerce, and thought. With every tick, the world inched closer to a profound transformation. The printing press, a marvel of rotational engineering, spread knowledge like seeds in the wind. It turned not just pages, but minds. Gears rotated inked letters onto paper, and through that humble action, revolutions began, not of machines yet, but of ideas. The age of mechanization had not yet dawned, but its heralds were already whispering in the clatter of type and the tick of tower clocks. In England, where damp air curled along cobbled streets and candlelight danced on brass, a man named Robert Hooke began to wonder if precision could be made practical. His contributions to the spring-driven watch, to harmonic motion, to the perfection of gear ratios, helped lay the foundation for a deeper, more delicate understanding of mechanical rhythm. And his contemporary Christian Huygens in the Dutch Republic designed the first pendulum clock marrying gravity to time through the gentle sway of weight and wheel. Even as Europe explored new lands, so too did it map the unknown within. Astronomy and mechanics moved hand in hand, Kepler, Galileo, Newton, each peering into the heavens and finding gears in the very orbits of planets. Galileo's interest in timekeeping led to experiments with pendulums, while Newton's laws described a universe where every motion could be measured, predicted, and perhaps replicated. And all the while, the gears kept turning, not just in machines, but in the very structure of thought. In the hands of artisans and clockmakers, the gear became a symbol of mastery. In the minds of philosophers, it became a metaphor for the universe itself, a grand divine mechanism whose every part, seen or unseen, contributed to the harmony of the whole. But a greater turning loomed on the horizon. The world, long shaped by hands and muscle, by wind and water, would soon be reshaped by steam and steel. The age of invention, of smoke-choked skies and iron dreams, was beginning to rise like a sun through fog. And at its heart, once again, would be the humble, tireless gear, ready to drive the engines of a new era. So sleep now, gentle listener, beneath the ticking breath of time. The tale is not done. The wheels have only begun to quicken. Beneath the soft haze of dawn's first light, the world stirred with a new kind of hum. Not the rustle of reeds in a river, nor the quiet footfall of travelers upon ancient roads, but a deeper murmur, mechanical and rising, as though the earth itself had drawn breath and turned its slumber into motion. The Industrial Revolution had begun, and with it the gear found its loud and thrilling voice. In the valleys of England, where the mist rolled low over green hills, and chimney smoke spiraled skyward like stories, unspooling, spinning frames clattered to life in mills by the thousands. Here, water wheels once turned slowly for flour and cloth, but now their rotations were amplified by ever more complex arrays of gears. Gear trains, bevel gears, worm gears, all working together like dancers in a grand and endless ballet. With each turn, cotton was drawn, twisted, woven. The labor of hundreds now performed by a single humming mechanism. James Watt, whose name would come to echo like thunder through the age of steam, peered into this future with eyes both curious and exacting. His refinements to the steam engine, that deep-breathing beast of brass and pressure, would not have been possible without gears, sun and planet gears. Connecting rods, flywheels, each element, not only transferring energy, but smoothing it, taming it, allowing steam's wild heart to be rendered into rhythm. The machines of Watt did not merely run, they pulsed, powered by the deep logic of rotational motion. And so the factories rose. Great halls of iron and glass thick with soot and the music of movement. In Manchester and Birmingham, in Lowell and Lyon gears, spun night and day, turning cotton to cloth, coal to motion, and labor to industry. It was an age of wonder and unease, where the promises of progress were painted in both light and shadow. For even as gears brought forth abundance, they also demanded discipline. Time was no longer fluid and seasonal, but measured by whistle shifts and ticking watches wound by tiny, perfect teeth. In the midst of this transformation came men of metal and mind. Isambard Kingdom, Brunel, George Stephenson, Eli Whitney, each weaving gears into their bold visions. Locomotives thundered across the land, their wheels powered by pistons and cranks, a symphony of rotation beneath steel rails. Steamships crossed oceans, their great propellers turning with relentless purpose. And deep within the hulls of these new vessels, gears spun ceaselessly, transforming fire and water into voyage. But not all motion was grand and roaring. In quiet workshops, pocket watches were assembled by lamplight, their mechanisms impossibly small, their balance, wheels and escapements no less elegant than any great engine. 1,000 tiny parts, fitted with delicate care, each tooth and pinion singing its part in the lullaby of time. The microcosm mirrored the macrocosm, What was vast in the factory was intimate in the hand. As the century advanced and gaslight gave way to electricity, gears did not fade, they adapted. In the workshops of Edison and Tesla, motors turned with magnetic precision, and gears once driven by muscle or steam were now powered by invisible forces. Electromechanical marvels emerged, calculating machines' record players, even the first faint heartbeat of automation. And though the world grew faster, more luminous, and seemingly more complex, the principle of the gear remained unchanged. A circle notched to fit another, a movement shared, a turning passed along. So now, dear dreamer, rest your head once more. The gears have spun through empires, revolutions, and dreams. Yet they still have much to show as the 20th century draws near, a time of steel skies code and circuits where rotation would meet electricity, and together they would birth the age of the machine. And so the night deepened, and the world, already trembling with the breath of machines, stepped into the delicate whir of the 20th century. The sky, once ruled by clouds and birds alone, began to stir with a new kind of movement. Metal wings lifted by the dreams of men and the mechanics of rotation. The Wright brothers, watching wind roll over the dunes of Kitty Hawk, built more than an aircraft. They built a system of gears and shafts, propellers and crank-driven linkages, all spinning toward the sky, carrying with them humanity's oldest wish to rise. As war came, first a grim murmur, then a shattering roar, the roll of gears grew more urgent. Tanks crawled like steel beetles across cratered fields, powered by internal combustion engines that turned gears into raw force. Aircraft soared and fell with gearboxes fine-tuned to the edge of failure. Submarines, silent beneath the waves, spun their screws through black water, vanishing and emerging with the breath of iron lungs. And deep within these war-born machines, the gear remained steady, unseen, enduring. Yet it was not only on battlefields that rotation evolved. In the quiet corridors of invention, engineers and thinkers were beginning to fuse motion with memory. Charles Babbage's vision of the analytical engine, though never built in his time, had cast a long, lingering shadow, and now that shadow stirred. In the flickering heart of early computers, gears still had a place. Konrad Zeuss's early machines in 1930s Germany ticked with mechanical logic binary gears that turned ideas into answers. Even IBM's punch card systems, clattering with disciplined rhythm, bore the ghost of gear trains within. Then came the age of the automobile, swelling like a tide. Henry Ford, with his moving assembly lines and modular brilliance, made rotation a way of life. Engines roared, wheels turned, differentials split torque like riddles answered in steel. Gears hypoid, helical planetary, began to live beneath every hood, shaping a century of movement. The road became a ribbon wound tight around the globe, and at every crossing rotation led the way. And beneath the earth, still deeper gears turned. In the depths of coal mines and oil pumps and derricks, in the whirring drills that chewed through rock and time, alike gearboxes and couplings carried the burden of human appetite. Every light switch, every refrigerator, every elevator whispered the presence of gears, quiet, invisible companions to modern life. And in the clock towers, still ticking across Europe, and in the wristwatches, glinting on wrists across oceans, the poetry of rotation endured. Though digital displays would come, the analog heart continued to beat smooth and serene. Some watchmakers, nestled in the Alps or hidden in Tokyo's crowded alleys, still assembled time the old way by hand with loop and screw-crafting complications that mimicked the planets, the tides, the phases of the moon. The gear, so ancient, had learned new dialects: electromechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic. Its voice changed, but its song remained familiar. Even as computers moved from gears to gates, and from gates to transistors, the idea of mechanical movement left behind a lasting impression, an aesthetic of clarity, of cause and effect, of harmony in motion. Now, as skyscrapers rose into cloud and satellites began their own eternal dances, overhead, gears spun within camera lenses, within elevators, within the motors that adjusted solar panels to chase the sun. Rotation had become a principle of modernity, not just in its physical form, but as a metaphor, order in complexity, balance in motion. And yet, amidst all this speed and light, one might pause, might listen. For somewhere in a museum or attic, in the ticking heart of a beloved heirloom, a gear turns still, slowly, faithfully, not driven by power or urgency, but by the old quiet desire to move forward one tooth at a time. As the 20th century wove its way into the digital age, the old world of grease and grit did not disappear. It transformed quietly, almost reverently, into something more intricate, more ethereal. For while electrons began to pulse through silicon and data moved at the speed of light, the rhythm of the gear still echoed beneath the surface, like the steady heartbeat beneath a racing mind. In the factories of Japan, Germany, and the United States, gears grew ever more refined. No longer hand-forged in smoky shops, they were now born in the clean precision of CNC machines shaped by lasers and guided by software. Tooth profiles were no longer merely practical. They were optimized, simulated, perfected before ever touching metal. Helical gears spiraled bevels, harmonic drives names like whispered spells, graced robotics and satellites alike. The automobile, too, was undergoing its quiet metamorphosis. Automatic transmissions with their intricate planetary gear sets and hydraulic finesse shifted with silky silence. Gears no longer needed a human hand to change them. Computers, guided by algorithms, sensed slope and speed, and did the work invisibly with an elegance the earliest engineers might have only dreamed of. In hybrid engines and electric drivetrains, the gears adapted again, shrinking, simplifying, yet never disappearing. Even the whir of an electric car, so hushed and clean, carried within it a whisper of rotation, of finely tuned balance. And then space, where gravity loosened its grip and silence reigned supreme, gears found new purpose. In the cold vacuum, they turned the solar panels of satellites, adjusted the antennae of deep space probes, moved the lenses of telescopes that peered beyond the edge of time. They spun inside rovers that crept across Martian dust, inside robotic arms on the International Space Station. Each movement had to be perfect, lubricated, not by oil which would freeze or evaporate, but by exotic coatings designed for the void. Still, the principle remained unchanged, motion transferred, force transformed. In laboratories and research centers, the gear also took on new identities, no longer just mechanical, but bio-inspired, molecular, even quantum. Scientists marveled at the tiny biological gears found in nature, the bacterial flagellum, a microscopic rotary engine spinning life itself forward. Researchers began to craft gears at the nanoscale, using carbon atoms and DNA strands to mimic what humanity had once only dreamed. The boundary between machine and life blurred, and in that blur the age-old logic of the gear found fresh bloom. Yet even in this world of abstraction and light, the human soul still yearned for the tangible. The rise of the steampunk aesthetic gears, exposed polished brass and glass, spoke of a nostalgia not merely for the past, but for a kind of truth in motion. In watches with skeleton dials and typewriters lovingly restored in bespoke bicycles and analog film cameras, gears continued to turn, not for necessity, but for beauty. For in every gear there is a story, a beginning, a middle, a turning. And so, while digital realms expanded code, flowing like rivers, devices growing smaller and smarter, the physical elegance of rotational mechanisms remained. Robotics surged into homes, hospitals, and factories, their joints and limbs guided by precision gears that could mimic the motion of a wrist, the bend of a knee, the twist of a finger. Prosthetics powered by microservos and gearboxes gave motion back to those who had lost it. Gears, it seemed, were not only tools of function, but restorers of grace. In a quiet room, somewhere near or far, a child takes apart a toy drawn not by destruction, but curiosity. Inside, they find it a small gear, bright and simple, its teeth clicking with joy. They spin it once, and it spins back as if to say, "I am still here. I've always been." Yes, the digital age had arrived. But the rotation, the gear, had not vanished. It had woven itself into every dream, every machine, every movement too fine to see. And so it turns still in hospitals, in homes in distant orbits. From the heart of the earth to the stars above it turns. Even now, as the world finds itself adrift in light, screens aglow signals flowing unseen through the air. The quiet turning of gears continues to echo beneath the din. Though they may seem hidden beneath the brushed metal and smooth glass of our modern tools, though their clatter has softened into the low hum of seamless function, they are still there, tucked within the very heart of motion. In the realm of automation, gears now commune with algorithms. In great robotic arms that dance through assembly lines, welding, lifting, painting, all with a grace that rivals nature. Each joint is driven by harmonized systems of gearboxes and feedback loops. Industrial robots, with their tireless precision, bear within them the living memory of the first wooden escapements and hand-forged cogs. The future, it seems, does not erase the past. It builds upon it gear by gear. And what of the cities, those grand machines of stone and steel? Elevators rise through their bellies. Escalators swirl like softened springs. Wind turbines atop towers reach into the sky, harvesting the air itself. Within each, the logic of rotation is honored. Even in the subtle click of a camera's lens, in the retracting eye of a telescope, in the winding gears that still steer some of our ships, the circle turns. More quietly, in the laboratories of biomechatronics engineers and dreamers, shape limbs that move like poetry. Mechanical joints guided by brushless motors and miniaturized gear trains allow an arm to pour a cup of tea, a leg to run again. In these sacred spaces of healing, rotation is not just motion, it is liberation, rebirth, dignity, returned. In space exploration, too, the gears endure. On Mars, rovers crawl like cautious beetles, gears turning in the red dust sheltered from storms, pushing forward with a patience unknown to men. And in the silent orbit of Earth, satellites continuously rotate their arrays, adjust their trajectories, all with tiny, carefully tuned gears that may spin for decades without rest. Speaking in the language of the cosmos, turn, balance, adjust. Even as we explore new frontiers of propulsion, magnetic levitation plasma drives quantum positioning, the old companions remain. Not always in steel or brass, not always visible to the eye, but in principle, in spirit, they persist. For wherever there is motion that must be shared, adjusted, restrained, or released, the gear is never far. And in the arts, too, it lingers. In music boxes hand-cranked and jewel-toned, where gears turn not for function, but for feeling. In kinetic sculptures, where rotation becomes poetry, written in shadow and rhythm. In theater stages that revolve beneath performers, offering the illusion of transformation. And in games, yes, in games puzzles with rotating rings, strategy, toys where gears interlock to create a cascade of consequences. There is something satisfying, even soul-soothing, in watching things turn. And so we arrive at the edge of now, the age of artificial intelligence, of self-driving vehicles, of neural networks, and near-instant computation. It is easy, perhaps, to think we've left the gear behind, that we've transcended the wheel, evolved past the cog. But if you were to open the case of a haptic feedback motor, or study the internals of a drone's gimbal, or peer into the tiny actuator of a surgical robot, you would find the same miracle, a gear turning humbly, steadily, passing power from one part to the next. No, the gear has not been abandoned. It has simply learned to whisper instead of shout. We are nearing the end of our journey now, but the wheel continues to turn. It always has. It always will. So let us pause and let the silence of the night deepen. In that stillness, listen closely. Can you hear it? That soft, rhythmic pulse of the world in motion. That gentle tick, that subtle whir that turn within the turn. It is the sound of continuity, of connection, of something very old moving forward into something very new. And now, at the quiet close of this long and winding journey, we find ourselves not at an ending, but in a circle, as fitting for a tale born of turning things. The story of gears of rotation and rhythm is not a straight line drawn from past to present, but a wheel that turns gently through the centuries, its rim touched by countless hands, its spokes woven with the dreams of those who dared to move the world. In the soft hush of modernity, where motion is often masked in silence and design strives for invisibility, the legacy of rotation still lives. It breathes in the slow spin of satellite dishes tracking faraway signals, in the gentle sweep of a robotic vacuum gliding across a sunlit floor. It lingers in the quiet industry of 3D printers, building form from filament layer by layer, each axis guided by belts and pulleys and, yes, gears, faithful as ever. Though some may look upon this as an age of code, of wireless miracles and formless power, the truth is more tender. Code may command, but something must still move. Something must respond. And in that response, in that instant, where thought becomes action, a gear still turns. Perhaps not the grand clanking gears of cathedral clocks or steam locomotives, but smaller, subtler ones, built of composites or carved from ceramics, gliding in silence. But there they are, nonetheless, guardians of motion. And so we enter the final lull, the twilight of this tale, and let the past cradle us gently. Remember the woodworkers of ancient China, their gears carved not just for function, but for beauty. Remember the scholars of Baghdad, the artisans of Alexandria, the inventors of the Renaissance, and the tinkerers of the Industrial Revolution. Their tools have changed, but their question remains the same. How can we make things move and move with meaning? In a way, every rotating mechanism, be it an ancient millstone or a whispering gyroscope in a spacecraft, is a kind of compass, a symbol of direction. They teach us that motion is more than speed. It is intention. A wheel must know its center. A gear must engage with others. No part turns alone. And there is something almost spiritual in that something deeply human. For we too seek connection. We too turn best when linked with others, when we pass energy, and receive it when our rhythms align with those around us. Gears are not solitary. They are collaborative. They share their motion, amplify it, divide it. They teach us that power is not hoarded, but transferred. So, as you drift into sleep, let your mind wander to those quiet turning worlds, the orreries in museums, tracing the dance of planets. The watches passed from hand to hand, ticking the seconds like whispered lullabies. The turbines catching the wind on lonely hills, turning energy into light. And perhaps in your dreams you'll walk through a world built entirely of gears. Great and small, polished and worn, they'll rise like forests around you. You'll place your hand upon one, feel it begin to turn, and watch as it sets 1,000 others in motion. There will be no rush, no roar, only the soft measured pulse of time and transformation. And in that moment, you'll know the gear is not a relic. It is a story still unfolding, a circle still turning. Sleep, now gentle listener. Let your thoughts become soft cogs, your breath, a wheel in quiet rhythm. Let the night cradle you in the gentle arms of memory, and may your dreams turn smoothly, endlessly, like the oldest and most faithful mechanism of all. The gear, the circle, the journey.